Good morning. I'm Mike Noondorfer, Advanced RV in Cleveland, Ohio.
I'm Brittany, Advanced RV.
And I'm Dan Quirk from Advanced RV.
And we're here this morning to bring you the crappiest video we've ever shot.
The main attraction with people who have Class B motorhomes and taking them out is the ability to be off-grid. And that allows you to camp anywhere in the city or a double-track road deep in a national forest. And it's a great way to travel.
Advanced RV clients are interested in the freedom that Brittany alluded to, the freedom to go anywhere, and they also are very much interested in leaving as little evidence that they were there as possible. They want to have efficient operation. That's why they're attracted to the 18 to 20 miles per gallon that the Sprinter motorhomes provide, and they want to leave little impact.
So the purpose of this video is to discuss the alternatives for storing and treating human waste. So as we travel in our Class B motorhomes, we'll take a look at some of these options. So let's take a look at some of the possibilities. We know you can stop on the side of the road, use a public restroom, or go to a campground restroom. But the three specific possibilities we're going to take a look at today that you'll find in an RV, maybe a cassette toilet, a composting toilet, or just a wet tank system.
So we want to talk about several things involved with each of those systems that Brittany just discussed. The first thing we want to talk about is preparation for using the equipment and odor control.
So Dan, you have some experience with a cassette toilet. Maybe we could talk about and start with odor control with cassette toilets.
Cassette toilets are small toilets that have a removable tank that is hand carried to a dump station. Deodorant pack that is put into them to control odor. They are very simple and relatively cheap to use.
Dan, how long can you go before you have to take the tank that's or the cassette out of the toilet and carry it through the RV and dump it responsibly? How many?
It depends on the amount of people in the RV. In my experience, I've gotten a week of usage out of a cassette toilet with my wife and myself.
Thank you. Cassette toilets, as most of you probably know, are widely used in Europe. And most of them have access for the cassette through the outside skin of the motorhome or trailer. So you don't have to carry the loaded cassette, so to speak, through the inside of the motorhome. You go outside, you pull it out, and there are places in Europe, as with any dump station, where you can properly empty a cassette.
Now, I don't think you've had experience using composting toilets, Dan, but I know you've done some research. And what would you say is the prep work that you found to be involved in the odor control beforehand that you take to set that up?
The setup of the cassette toilet seems to entail using some sort of a filler material to break up the waste and allow the bacteria to circulate. It's either a peat moss or a coconut coil bed that is hydrated and mixed up within the storage container of the composting toilet. The odor control is usually handled by a small vent fan that draws air through the composting toilet compartment and vents it outside of the unit, thereby preventing any sort of backup within the bathroom where the cassette toilet is, or the composting toilet is.
Dan, on the composting toilet, so you fill it with the organic material that you talked about. What is that? Peat moss or coconut?
Yes,
shells or whatever.
Either peat moss, sphagnum peat moss, or the outside husks of coconut that is available through some online retailers.
And then does the liquid waste, the urine, also go into the?
No, the urine, there's two different types. There's a separating style toilet, which is most common in RVs, and then for mostly residential uses, there is a system that combines the two, but the separating seems to be the best solution for an RV.
So when it's separate, I won't get into the details of how it's separated, but evidently it gets the liquids separate from the solids. What do we do with the liquids?
The urine is separated in the toilet and is collected in a separate container that will be dumped in a holding tank or dump station at the campsite.
And what about smell? The urine tank, is it sealed off when it's not being used? How do you avoid the smell getting in the motorhome of stale urine?
The ventilation system the small ventilation fan takes care of that problem.
So all composting toilets require ventilation?
Yes, they do.
And do they all require a fan and the energy to operate a fan?
There are some passive systems. There's also a vent fan that would run off a small solar cell to power the vent system.
Each of our clients, when they start a conversation with us and talk to us about the approach and the way that they're going to travel, they talk about how they want their waste deposit set up, their system. So all of the systems to date that our clients have chosen are the wet toilet tank, which Mike is going to demonstrate.
No, not demonstrate. Sit on.
So under the chassis, the waste gets collected in this 18-gallon tank, and all of our clients have been adding a macerator pump for the dumping of that. There are electric valves to eliminate the waste once you get to a truck stop. And Mike, why don't you talk about, if you could, your experience with the prepping and the odor control of this system?
This system I have quite a bit of experience with, and it's the one we use is a ceramic toilet. It's pretty conventional. Wets the inside of the bowl before you use it, and then you can fill the bowl with as much water as is appropriate for the business that's going to come. And then it drains through a valve into the black tank. It's easy to clean, just like the home toilet, and it's a pretty conventional system.
Can you talk a little bit more about that cleaning, Mike?
Yeah, the toilet that we have comes with a little spray nozzle right next to the toilet, so if it does need cleaning, it just is sprayed down.
So Mike, with the composting toilet, how do you think that is to clean after use?
Well, based on Dan's research, the composting toilets seem to have a big opening. So it's more like going to the bathroom in an outhouse, and where there's no, just whatever you do kind of either goes to the tank for urine or dumps right straight through.
And what about the materials? This toilet versus a cassette or a composting toilet, does one stain more than the other that you have to be careful of or clean extra?
Dan, did you find anything out about staining?
The cassette toilets that I have experience with are for lightweight tent campers, and they are plastic, so they would stain as any plastic would when exposed to the chemicals in human waste.
This toilet is ceramic, so it's much more impervious to staining, but probably not a big deal.
All right, and what about the cassette toilet? Any differences with cleaning that between any of the others that we've talked about?
Nope, the cassette toilet is pretty much like the toilet that Mike is sitting on, except that the storage tank for the waste is directly underneath the bowl.
Does the cassette toilet have a bigger opening as well?
No. It's exactly the same as this toilet, except this toilet system has the gray tank, or has the black tank underneath the chassis.
And we talked about ventilation with some of them, but could we review again what ventilation is needed with the cassette composting and this toilet system?
The composting toilet, as I mentioned earlier, needs to have a small electric fan to draw the air across the storage container to control moisture and to control odor. A cassette toilet is internally vented into the vehicle, and there is no external venting because of it being a compact size. The system that our clients have been choosing has a vent outside of the chassis on the roof, compliant with RVIA standards.
And does that vent require a fan and electricity?
No, it does not. It's a passive system.
All right, so if we look at the cassette toilet again and we talk about emptying and disposal, what's involved with the emptying and disposal of a cassette?
The cassette toilet has a small tank that is pulled out from the unit. It's about 5 gallons. It is carried to the dump station, and you dump it very similar to a under chassis mounted black tank. You would open it up, dump it into the station, rinse it out, dump that, put a small amount of water and a deodorant pack into it, and return it to use in the camper.
And what about the emptying procedure for a composting toilet?
The composting toilet depends on the system of the toilet itself. It would have to be, some of them have to be physically removed from the camper. A urine tank would have to be carried out, and a container with the solids would also have to be carried out. There are some that would be just a a separate container that would be removed, but you're still carrying your waste through the camper.
And Mike, could you talk about your experience with this system's emptying and disposal of waste?
In dumping the gray water, it's hooked up to the same place as the black water. We empty the black water tank first, and then open the valve for the gray water. It's all just 2 buttons, and the gray water goes back and back flushes the black water tank, and then it's pumped out. The macerator is both a grinder and a pump, and it'll pump through a garden hose uphill. It'll pump into a toilet. It'll pump, there's a lot of flexibility. So that's what we do. We empty, Marcia and I can go 5 to 7 days, maybe longer than that, on the 40-gallon fresh water that advanced RV motorhomes carry, 26 gallons of stored gray water, and 18 gallons of black water.
Great. And Dan was alluding to how there's disassembly involved with the cassette and composting toilet. Is there any disassembly involved with this system?
No, none at all. You just use it as you would a house toilet.
And what about energy use? We haven't spoken much about that, but the energy use for each of these systems, what's required? And Mike, did you want to start with this one?
Well, the only energy is the macerator pump when you empty it. The vent for this system is passive. There's no electricity used. The composting vents are active, and they require some small amount of battery energy to operate. They do operate around the clock. I imagine you could turn them off, but pretty much they're 24/7, right?
24/7.
And then the cassette toilet doesn't require venting.
Thinking about the disassembly of the different cassette and composting toilets, is there extra space that you need to allow yourself to remove this in and out of the bathroom in the motorhomes?
Yes, there is. The cassette toilet, again, has a small tank that's removed, so you have to have a clearance for that. The composting toilet requires some disassembly as well, so that you have to ensure that the area that you're putting the toilet, that there's adequate space for disassembly and the crank to stir the solids within the storage container.
Dan, are there composting and cassette toilets that will fit in our large bathroom?
I have found 2 toilets that may fit into our bathroom at this point in time.
Are they composting or cassette or both?
They're composting.
Okay, and
A cassette would be impractical in our application because of the aisle is not large enough to allow one, and we wouldn't want to cut a hole in the side of our nice streamlined chassis for external access.
Unless a client really wanted it, then we'd do it.
And what about the space? We talked about having to remove it, but are they any larger or smaller, the ones that you found?
They're about the same size, but for the required disassembly, even though they are the same size, you have to have clearance between them and the walls, and that cuts into the usable space within our bathroom.
Looking at these different systems, can we talk about the cost and which ones may be more expensive than the other, if any?
I think we didn't really do a study of comparative costs, but they're pretty equivalent. It may be a little less cost to put a cassette toilet in, and even some of the composting toilets would be pretty competitive. There's not too much difference between the 3 different systems in cost.
Great. What about, this is your first time motorhoming and you don't know which system you want to choose. You think you've done all your homework and researched and you pick a system. What if you want to change? Are they easy? Is one more easy to change to than the other?
I think a cassette and a composting toilet are the easiest because you can probably just seal off the opening to the black tank, leave it in place, install those toilets, and you'd be done. If you wanted to go the other way, if you had a cassette toilet or a composting toilet and you wanted to install a black tank and a conventional toilet, there'd be some more under chassis work to do and plumbing work, and it would be more complicated. There's an awful lot of information on the internet about use of different toilet systems. There's some really interesting pictures of how you maintain and prep for the composting toilet, so we'll put some links on this video to some of the other videos on the website that are interesting.
We look forward to hearing your feedback, and we hope you'll share your experiences with us on any of the systems that we were talking about today. And we hope that you'll subscribe to our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, or tweet us on Twitter.
Thank you. We're sorry about the subject, but it's part of life. Thank you, Brittany and Dan, and thanks for watching.
Take care.